This week, Nicholas and Alexandra, which last night had its royal premiere. With me, director Franklin J. Schaffner, and Janet Sutzman and Michael Jaston, who play the title roles. Then the week's new releases, which have America prostrate on the psychoanalytic couch. Among them, Drive, he said, and Taking Off. Nicholas and Alexandra is one of those big films. It has stars in galactic quantity, a vast budget, and an epic subject, the fall of the Tsars and the rise of communism. Child's Guide history would have it that Nicholas was a fool and his wife monstrously under the spell of Rasputin. Well, the film is no apology, but it does place some of their failings in the light of their anguish over a haemophiliac son, Alexis, and that in turn is made plausible chiefly by the two main performances.
My decision stands. I've seen you out of courtesy. If you've come here to plead...
I came to say goodbye, Batushka. I'm going home. I don't like St. Petersburg. It makes me drink too much. And when I drink, the women come. The women here are worse than the peasants in my village. They have no restraint. Is Matushka angry with me?
She won't admit you even take a drink, much less... No. She believes in you completely.
She is a saint. Matushka, if you need me while I'm gone, pretend I'm with you. Say the things that trouble you the way you always do, and that will help. I only sit and listen anyway. The voice of God is in you. And no harm will come.
It was necessary.
Why?
Stolypin recommended it.
Our friend warned me it was bad.
Rasputin drinks, takes bribes. He is an adulterer.
He's a saint. Little men always abuse them.
I can show you the police reports.
More little men?
People say he sleeps with you.
What do I care what people think?
I have to care.
I want him. Bring him back.
I can't.
Can't you do anything?
I am. I'm standing up to you for once.
Who's going to save Alexei?
We have doctors.
Damn you and your doctors. What about my son?
I've other important things to answer for.
I don't. Give me Rasputin back.
No, I will not.
If baby dies, you murdered him.
I didn't give him hemophilia.
Murderer. I'll never forgive you.
You gave it to him. It was you.
Don't you think I know it? When I see him bleed, I think I did it. As if I'd put a knife in him. I've tried to make up for it. I've seen so many specialists and doctors and surgeons. Sometimes I did not tell you. I know most of them were quacks. But I still tried. I have spent nights on my knees, praying. And Rasputin's the only one who's helped me bear my punishment. That's why I cling to this common peasant from Siberia. They laugh at me in the streets. You have turned against me. But I cannot help it.
Slimmy.
It's me. Whatever happens, I deserve it. It's my punishment. It's mine.
Last night, as I said, was the film's royal premiere, and as royal premieres are rather rarer than they used to be, everyone sees the opportunity to dress up and go and see the royal family, past and present. Mr. Schaffner, by making the reason for Rasputin's continuance at the court one of his remarkable, almost miraculous power of recovery over the child, Were you trying to give us an agreeable story or something that was historically authentic?
I think it, not certainly an agreeable story, but certainly something that was indeed historically authentic. There is no question that the agony of the lady played by the lady to my left was genuine, and the terrible medical frustrations and the terrible personal frustrations because of the disease of her son
Because the rumours at
affected
the
all of her
time,
conduct.
the rumours at the time were manifold. You touch on some of them. She was supposedly having an affair with Rasputin. There was some suggestion that perhaps he was a German agent. Many more rumours like that.
I'm sure there were hundreds of rumors. You know, here's a character that was larger than life, and there was no question that there were calculatedly thousands of rumors about this man. I think that the picture hits closest to the truth. Certainly, he did not have an affair with the empress. Certainly, what Rasputin was trying to do was to retain his position in that society. He retained the position because of the cooperation that the Tsarista gave him, and she depended upon him because he gave her solace in the problem she had with her son.
Both the characters, both Nicholas and Alexandra, are very difficult to play. Both are weak and autocratic at different times. Do you feel now that you interpreted her as the woman that she probably was, Janet Sutzman?
I think, excuse me, I did. The thing was, the difficulty was to sort out all those rumours we've just been talking about from what we hope to be the truth. And I think one did. I think I know her well enough now to say categorically she didn't have an affair with Rasputin.
Did you do a lot of preparation for the part? Did you read
Yes, I
around
did.
the period?
Yes, I did. Vastly. I found all kinds of now unobtainable books which you can find if you scrabble around the London Library and things. There was a vast outpouring of memoirs and diaries and all kinds of things around about 1920. All those White Russian emigres wrote and wrote and wrote, you know. And those were fascinating.
There's supposedly letters between her and Rasputin, which I believe actually are forged. Did you see any of those?
No, very few. I mean, the really extant letters are between her and Nicholas when he was at the front during the First World War. There are some notes that she wrote to Rasputin to her, but they're usually full of information, like, come here quickly, I need you.
What about the character of Nicholas? As I say, not an easy one to approach. How did
No.
you sort him out?
Well, the difficulty as an actor approaching that character was that the character of Nicholas is a weak man. So I had to try and not make him indulgent. I had to try and play him powerfully weak so that he wouldn't become boring, because weak people are very boring if they start moaning about their sorrows. And I had to try and make him, as Janet made Alexandra, a human being, as opposed to a cardboard figure that you often see in historical pictures.
There's something about the performance between the two of you that is almost separate from the film as a whole, and I don't mean this as a criticism. It's rather attractive, as though there were a quiet, restrained play going on in the midst of this colossal background. Was that deliberate?
Yes, very. We wanted so much for it to, since it was called Nicholas Alexandra, to be about them and about those private moments that we never know about royalty, about what they do in a bedroom or a boudoir, how they talk to each other, what little gestures they make between them, holding hands, or something equally simple but equally specific about the relationship.
I think one of the most moving scenes is the one where you come back having abdicated and break down completely, a scene that you took very near the edge. It was very dangerous and it worked utterly.
Well, yes, we went out on a limb, but Franklin agreed that this had got to be played full out. We couldn't hold back on it. So in some ways, it was played rather like you would play that scene in the theatre.
Yes.
We pulled out the stops, and I think it worked.
Yes. Can I come back, Mr. Schaffner, to the difficulty of the political situation? I quite deliberately didn't brush up on my background because I wanted to see how much I would readily understand. And a woman next to me in the interval said, well, who's that man in the Parliament? And she meant Kerensky.
Right.
I wonder if you have done sufficient to identify all the personnel involved.
I would think so. One of the great dangers, of course, is being enormously expository in a film. I think that audiences are reasonably satisfied if sooner or later they are able to identify a character without your laying it on almost immediately. It goes back to the business of immediate exposition. Humphrey Bogart used to say, if I've got to say I'm now in Chicago, put me in front of a waterfall with rose petals coming over.
I'm afraid you're going to have thrown at you, as I suppose you well know, that one line where Lenin says, "I'm Lenin, how do you do, I'm Stalin."
I am perfectly willing to have that thrown at me. I think that as a filmmaker, the intent was to have an amusing moment. And that's precisely what it is.
So that wasn't embarrassed laugh?
It's not embarrassing to me at all.
The audience laughed last night.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a big laugh, I
But
think,
it's a moment of, I think it's a very funny situation. A man turns and says, "I'm Roosevelt," and the other man says, "I'm Truman."
Oh, well, I'm glad it was intended. Epics generally, and perhaps you can talk a bit here too about your very much decorated film Patton. Are they difficult to do? Do they daunt you?
Any film is difficult to do. Just as I think any theater, indeed, this is difficult to do, this kind of instant drama. No, I don't think that you cast yourself in that kind of context, whether it's say for sake of argument, a $3 million picture or a $12 million picture. You can't think in those terms. You think only in the terms of your devotion, your interest, your ability to execute that kind of thing. And if you're daunted by the figures, then you might as well not start it.
Would you say that Patton, I mean, for the reasons that we've been into, was an easier film for you to make, probably?
They were totally different films. I would say, in retrospect, that probably Nicholas and Alexandra was more difficult to make.
They're not totally different in that you do give an ambiguity to your leading characters. You obviously like to do this, and this made...
Fighting words, ambiguity.
Well, I mean that you give the character all the complexity they deserve to have in
I
a
think
long
that
film.
best filmmaking is not polarized filmmaking. I don't think Patton was a polarized picture. I certainly don't think that Nicholas and Alexandra takes a polarized position on the characters. And I think that that's what's genuine storytelling, and that's what interests me.
But what comes over in both films, I think, and I only guess this, is that you're very much an actor's director. Well, I should ask you,
vouch for
Janet.
that. Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've ever come across a director who really pulled out of one so much with the least possible amount of direction, in fact. I mean, this is extraordinary kind of language, an unspoken language that I go... And I think actors on the whole enjoy that most, because once you over-articulate about something, you destroy something somewhere.
It's a
I
terrible
never
thing
found
to
that
talk
with
about in
Franklin.
front of you, and I'm sorry about that.
No, but why shouldn't you say something nice about somebody if you believe it? You say nice things about people when they're dead.
I haven't waited that long.
No, usually that happens. Franklin is the most tolerant, humble human being I've met, and he also happens to be a brilliant director. He never shouted once on the set in 6 months. That's incredible. I will never work for anybody who shouts after working with Franklin.
Well, having had that said about you,
I better fade away into the wall.
give me one scene, perhaps, that you would count as the best.
What, in Nicholas and Alexandra?
Yes, between these two. Oh.
Oh, that's enormously difficult. May I say, instead of saying one scene, that as an American director, this has been the most joyful experience of my life, working with English actors. And I must say that for Miss Sussman and for Mr. Jaston and for Mr. Baker, they are remarkable performers, carrying an awfully heavy load and doing it brilliantly.
Well, thank you all very much, and I think, and I hope it sounds genuine. I can pay a small tribute of my own by showing a bit of Patton, because George C. Scott's performance does confirm something of what's been said.
Almighty and most merciful Father, we humbly beseech thee of thy great goodness to restrain this immoderate weather with which we've had to contend. Grant us fair weather for battle. Graciously hearken to us as soldiers who call upon thee, that armed with thy power, we may advance from victory to victory and crush the oppression and wickedness of our enemies and establish thy justice among men and nations. Amen.
Patton, I suppose, showed us America at a time when she still had a cowboy faith in her flag, when aggression had a glory. But 3 films this week show America finding it increasingly hard to sustain the injuries of modern living, although war of the Vietnam kind does still haunt the narrative of at least one, and that's Drive, he said. It's directed by Jack Nicholson, who as an actor has already interpreted a good deal of the American malaise. He gave, you may remember, the one and only professional performance in Easy Rider. And he can be seen going from sexual Superman to impotence in another film called Carnal Knowledge that's on at the moment. But neither Drive, he said, nor any of the other films I want to talk about should smugly be thought of as the problems of another parish. They're all about the different ways that structures, institutions like marriage, the family, the work ethic are breaking down. And if Drive, he said, has a fault, and I think it's a far better film than most reviews would have you imagine, then it's because it takes on too many targets. It demands a lot of concentration, and it doesn't give you an easy narrative guide. It uses images to say what it means, but very simply, it's about three people, a college ball game player with a draft-dodging flatmate and a chain-smoking bedmate, although she's actually married to a complacent professor. And it uses these people to demonstrate that the war, the consumer life, the game, are all actually the same thing, with the same aim, to win. And using the structure of the game as a metaphor, it shows that not only has the aim itself become fatuous, but the very moral virtues the game was designed to keep supple have become strained. So to give you a better idea of just how this American dream has come to look in the light of day, here's a clip where the girlfriend, played by Karen Black, is visiting paradise itself, an American supermarket.
All right, go ahead. I hate it already.
Produce department, line 05.
Yeah, so? Olive, please.
Do you steal?
So, what about the recipe?
How long have you been stealing?
For years.
Why?
It excites me.
Sexually?
Mr. Nelson, please concentrate on the wine.
Hi. I'll see you, Olive. I got some more things to pick up.
Hector, I'm not seeing you anymore.
Wait.
No, Hector, you wait. I'm trying to tell you something. Really.
This room has autographs.
I'm pregnant.
Pregnant?
Richard and I are very happy.
Whose is it?
Do I make this more painful?
It's mine, right? Have you been bawling here?
I hate you for
I'm
that.
asking you for a reason.
What?
I got the clamp.
You notice the music in the background. I'm delighted to say that Rank have reopened Milos Forman's first film in and about America, Taking Off. That deals with a common form of fracture in the family, the generation gap. Forman's great gift is a wit that never lacks sympathy. Using Buck Henry and Audra Lindley as the parents of a missing teenage girl, he makes out of their bewilderment a comedy that rides very close to sorrow. As one familiar unit falls apart, he shows people blindly regrouping into another for comfort. In this case, a special society for the parents of missing children. Here, Buck Henry, having spotted someone else's missing daughter, is about to be co-opted. Another remarkable musical backing. There's another very funny sequence where all the parents trying to penetrate the mysteries that separate them from their children are given a pot training session. And when I say pot, I don't mean the kind that you all once sat upon. It only serves to show, though, that by imitating people you don't really come any closer. Instead of understanding, you simply increase the distance and contempt. And much the same could be said for another film, The Marriage of a Young Stockbroker. This, again, is a funny film, but it could have been much funnier had the rest of the cast not left Richard Benjamin to do all the comedy on his own. Joanna Shimkus as his wife, who is, I think, the most beautiful actress working today, is not, I'm afraid, a comic. But it's rather difficult for her, because she and all the other women characters are really the villains of the piece. It's about that peculiar female habit of provoking a man out of his mind by bending over in short skirts and low necklines. And then the moment they've got the man to themselves in marriage, convincing the poor fellow he must be psychologically sick to want unnatural things like sex and looking at ladies with no clothes on. It's the first film I've seen in months with a happy ending, although to make the marriage happy, the young stockbroker has to divorce his wife first. He delivers the document to her at a time that could have been better chosen.
For every one I hit long, I hit 6 into the net. Today I'm going to stop chopping down.
That's right. Step right into it.
Boy, did they get a steal. Only $140,000 for this marvelous old two-story cement.
Honestly now, isn't a man like Charlie Maguire a revelation? And after poor, pathetic Bill, he must hit you like a breath of fresh air. I mean, I almost have to laugh, darling. I mean, it's so easy for us to talk. We've always been so close. But you and poor Bill, well, there's never been any real dialogue between you at all. Do you realize that? I mean, a lack of dialogue. You know, in a way, that's been the central tragedy of your marriage. You know, Lisa, I remember just after your honeymoon, you know, the day the three of us went looking for an apartment for you? Well, Bill just stood there like a spot on the rug. You know, if I hadn't talked to the apartment manager myself, I honestly think she'd have turned Bill down as some kind of a dangerous dumb mute. Lisa, are you listening? Oh, yes. Poor darling, after all you've been through, it's no wonder you're confused.
Of course, the good ones don't stay. Just when you get them trained, they go home for the weekend to Tijuana and never come back. Well, have you tried color these days? Get us some fresh towels, Martha, would you?
Sure. No. There's no way of dealing with poor Bill.
Oh, don't bother. I have some here in my locker.
Oh, okay. I mean, crazy.
Here, dry off.
Crazy,
Take
Bill.
the towel, Lisa. Dry off and explain to me why you were here playing tennis.
Why I was?
Playing tennis.
You mean to tell me you burst in here to find out why I was playing tennis?
No, but it's interesting. Because you hate tennis. Why do you do things you hate?
I must be crazy, too. One minute I want to be a model, and the next minute I realize how stupid it is, and then I think about having a baby, and then the modeling again, back and forth. It's been going on like this every day for a year now, Bill. We're screwed up.
We have been, Lisa.
I want to be on the cover of Vogue, and you want to have sex orgies with Eskimos. What kind of a marriage is that?
Probably a normal one.
A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the 15th London Film Festival, and I said there were good reasons for festivals. Well, this one's ending tomorrow and has proved my point. The director, Ken Blashen, reports a record number of 40,000 admissions. But most surprising, perhaps, is that 7 of the films shown are banned in their own countries. Hopefully, success abroad is going to soften hearts a bit at home. And at least 10 films the public might not otherwise have seen have found distributors. But one hasn't. And that's Jacques Demy's fairy tale film, Donkey's Skin. I had a letter from a distraught mother last week. How, she said, can I get my children to the pictures en famille? Every U film seems to be on with an X. Well, it's surprising how right she is. Demy's film is the perfect answer. It's about princesses and kings and castles, and it's absolutely lovely. People have got blue faces, red horses, roses grow on the inner walls of the palace, and the bedspreads have got buttercups all over them. It has, in Monsieur Demy's slightly off-key English, a pure story for children and a perverse one for grown-ups. In other words, as I say, it's perfect and should have a release. Until it gets one, may giant toads rain down on Wardour Street. Good night.
ce qui est interdit. Nous irons ensemble à la buvette. Nous fumerons la pipe en cachette. Nous nous gaverons de pâtisserie.
Il y en a tant sur terre. Nous ferons bien sûr des tas d'enfants.
Nous vivrons ensemble un conte de fées charmant.